I'd like to call the meeting to order. Invite everyone to please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Peter Melbeck.
Here.
Steve Nelson.
Here.
James Shiloh.
Here.
Julian Davies.
Here.
Michael Vito.
Here.
Derek Jones.
Present.
Kristen Wren.
Here.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda as proposed? Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as proposed?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Davies.
Yes.
DeVito.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Wren.
Yes.
Shiloh.
Yes.
Melbeck.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Audience to visitors. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the board this evening?
I will. Nobody else.
You would state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Sure. Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Lundeen. I live on Savinock Street. I'm glad to be back at the board meeting. I've been a little busy, so thanks for having me back. I just want to say that I'm going to continue to ask questions and I'm going to continue to fight for our children. And I'm going to continue to ask community members questions about what's happening in this district. And I want to know why we have teachers that are concerned about what's happening to them next. And I want to know why we're at this point right now. I'm a public school educator. I know how important it is for me to feel safe, feel protected, feel valued, so that I can pour back into my students. It's all over the district website, empowering our learners, but you have got to take care of these teachers to retain them here in this community, to take care of our students. It's like when you're in the airplane. We've got to have our mask on first before we can help the younger ones around us. Please be transparent with this community as to what's happening and take care of these teachers that are working so hard to help the community through the trauma. We've been talking a lot about it in my district. Every single one of us is going through trauma with this pandemic, no matter how you perceive it, and you have got to have their backs. Make it happen. Keep pushing into that hard work, and I always appreciate your time and your service to the community.
Thank you.
I am Holly Schmidt. I live at 1395 Oakland Drive, and I'm going to yield my minutes to Nancy Korth. Elaine Dwyer, 520 Grant, yield my minutes to Nancy Korth.
Rachel Strack, 1370 Winfield Drive, and I yield my minutes to Nancy Korth.
I'm Debbie Eckerlo, 1031 South Cross Street, and I yield my minutes to Nancy Korth.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nancy Korth. I live at 733 Nancy Court in Sycamore. This is my 18th year in the school district. I'm currently a para at North School. I have a degree in elementary and in special education. My first 2 years, I was a special ed teacher here at the middle school, working with Jolene. Then after teaching out of state and being a stay-at-home mom, I came back to work in the district as a special ed para. I have also been a librarian at both North Grove and North for a total of 9 years, and now for the past 4 years, I have been the health assistant in the nurse's office at North School. As a single mom with a daughter in the education program at NIU, I need to supplement my para income by working several district jobs. Each year, I work at the ESY summer program. This summer, I was a health para for the Oscar program. I currently work at North until 3:30. I am then a site director for the daily Oscar program until 6 p.m. After that, 2 nights a week, I work at the field house, and 2 nights I work as a district tutor. That is how I survive on my para wage. I'm here to remind the board and let parents, and the community know that we have had between 25 and 30 openings posted for paras, health assistants, lunchroom staff, tech, and bus drivers, many since last spring of 2021. These openings are ongoing and have never been filled. I want to start by posing two questions. How do we attract new candidates for these positions? And how do we retain our current experienced and loyal staff? I'd also like to have you keep in mind our district's mission statement. Now, we all know that Sycamore is a great place to live and work and raise our children, but something is causing candidates to not even apply for these jobs. I recognize this issue has been exacerbated by the pandemic, but I can't say that that is the only cause. After 18 years of working in this district, I keep coming back. I do love my job, mostly for the wonderful people that I work with and the students that I work with. However, new candidates are not even going to apply if we don't promise them a reasonable hourly wage and conditions that don't force them to do more than their original job description entails. And forget about getting sick or having an appointment, because we have no para subs available to cover for us. Our current paras are being stretched way too thin. We have unfilled openings at most every school in our district. This means that we are picking up the slack for those open positions. Personally, I have been on my own as a health para at North School since the beginning of the school year without the benefit of a nurse in our building at all. That is because our nurse is needed at South Prairie, since they have not been able to fill the health assistant position there. And that has been posted since the beginning, or actually last spring of 2021. Our district now requires a CNA certificate to apply for that position, but CNAs can make 2 to 3 times the wage that our district is offering to pay. I did my part and I recommended a candidate for that position, but when her husband found out that her pay would not even cover their daycare, she withdrew. We are short 2 paras at North School. Our current 2.5 paras are expected to take on the workload of these unfilled positions with the same pay. They are stretched way too thin, and the services that they can feasibly provide to our deserving students is obviously less than ideal, despite the fact that our North paras have a combined 50 years of experience in our district. Our paras work directly with IEP students, RTI students, students with 504 plans, and all of our students, rushing between multiple classrooms throughout the day in an attempt to meet the instructional minutes that these students require for their IEPs. And there's a reason I stopped being a librarian. The time in the library with students has been reduced to 20 minutes with each class to check out books. Our librarians are now working the other half of their day in the classroom with students, reading aloud, teaching the kids library skills, or just letting them browse the shelves, if at all, is a rush job. And without parent volunteers, there's no way you can reshelve all those books. My point in coming tonight is not to tell you anything that you shouldn't already know, but the community and our parents may not know what the impact is of all of these unfilled positions. This issue needs to be addressed because it is negatively affecting our current and dedicated employees and the students of our district as we struggle to effectively do our jobs and absorb the job duties of those positions that continue to remain unfilled. Our students are certainly impacted by doing without the extra instruction and services that a full staff of paras throughout our school district would provide to them, and it is wearing down the stamina of our existing paras. To become a para or a sub in DeKalb County requires quite a list of requirements to the ROE, and I'm told with the cost of a background check, a physical, a TB test, fees, fingerprinting, not to mention 60 semester hours or an associate's degree, this can rack up several $100s, making it cost prohibitive to even want to apply to be a para or a sub. What can we do about this? How do we keep our students safe, healthy, and cared for when we are short health room staff, especially during this pandemic, when we have the added responsibility of COVID testing, tracking, and protocol procedures? How can we attract candidates to our district to fill these positions before they find better employment offering more than $13 an hour? And maybe more importantly, how can we retain our current experienced and loyal staff who can hit the ground running each year with no training required? How can we make strides to improve services and reach the goals of our neediest students without the staff to deliver this instruction? Is this fulfilling our mission statement? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Colleen Overton. I live at 1772 Sunflower Drive. I have 3 students in this district, and I can tell you, I am frustrated, I'm upset, because these teachers have busted their butts year in and year out. You have staff that are making less, 5-year teachers are making less than the first-year teachers, which is ridiculous. This stress that these teachers are carrying about not knowing if they're going to go on strike is going to the kids, and it's not acceptable. They pick it up, whether you know it or not, they carry it. It is not acceptable. And this vaccine mandate, to be in this district, you lost a lot of parent volunteers because of it. Where they could be filling in, they can't. Where they could be helping out in the library, they can't. So you are harming our students and our staff. And as a parent, it is unacceptable. It is very unacceptable. You guys are getting funding. For what? Where is this funding going? We are wasting our time testing healthy kids and staff for what? You should be saving those resources to test the kids that are sick or close contact to keep them in school. Some of these kids have lost 24 days of school already. And what will happen when the teachers go on strike? What will happen to these kids? Our kids are the ones that are paying for it. This pandemic, these kids are paying for it right now. They are so far behind, and it's not acceptable. That's all I got.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Shane Dukes, and I live at 848 Coventry Circle North in Sycamore. I've got 1 student in the middle school, as well as a spouse that works in the district. Here to discuss something other than COVID mandates. What you fail to realize is, by my estimate, a majority of your support staff has 1 foot out the proverbial door, and they're ready to walk. This isn't meant to chastise Mr. Wilder or the board. As a 20-year veteran in the United States military, I've seen all kinds of leaders, and leadership comes in many forms and levels. However, I'm in complete disbelief that an entity can be in charge of an entire school district, yet be so clueless as to what's going on with the employees. These are nurses, security personnel, bus drivers, and administrative staff. If I missed anyone, I apologize. These staff members have never questioned why they do what they do. They never questioned being placed in front of COVID-positive cases on a daily basis. Ladies and gentlemen, know why? Because they have an unfaltering love for their jobs and their students. It's as plain and simple as that. These students look to this staff as a positive force in their day-to-day lives. For some, this may be the only positive enforcement they encounter because of their home life. I can go on and on about the level of commitment your employees have, but let me ask another question. Would any of you have that same level of commitment for about $300 a week? Would you still show up to your current professions for what amounts to an $8,000 annual average below the poverty line in Illinois? Do you expect your employees to do the same? For reference, the Illinois poverty line is $26,000, while many of your staff make between $18,000 to $20,000 a year. I mean, honestly, is this what you consider a fair wage? No one's asking to get rich here. I believe I can speak for most of your support staff when I say that appreciation is the #1 item that's missing in this district. Appreciation verbally and monetarily. Yes, it is fully understood that there are 10-month positions, but many treat this as a career and not a part-time job. I'm asking this board to consider what I've stated tonight and think about how well you show appreciation to your employees. It's been well publicized. Mr. Wilder's been driving a bus, and that's awesome. But Mr. Wilder, are you ready to start completing the daily tasks of your support staff? Because this type of scenario could be on the horizon, and will most likely cause District 427 to close its doors until replacements can be found. Replacements that are most certainly not going to come to work for $300 a week. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Certainly take all those comments under consideration. Next item then would be communications, correspondence, informational items, letters and newsletters. There were several. FOIA requests, 2 FOIA requests, both of which have been dealt with, answered. Committee reports.
Again, no planning and zoning this month, 2 months in a row. And SEF did have a grant committee meeting last Monday, so a week ago from yesterday. There were 11 grant submissions, 3 of which the district pulled back and chose to fund internally. They felt that was something that should be in the budget. And we heard from 2 of the other remaining, what was that, 8? And I believe all but 1 were funded. And that was somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 grand or so. I want to say that was percent, 15 or 16 grand. So, and that's all been pushed out. So, and they touched, I believe, every building in the district, if I'm not mistaken. So, that was a successful first grant meeting, and there'll be another one that will come up in January. That's the update.
Our thanks to SEF for funding those grants.
I will share that with you.
Other committee reports? Suspension report. Or a few. Assistant Superintendent for Business Services report.
Thanks, Jen. Tonight I'm going to give the presentation for the 2021 tentative levy. So just a reminder, I know I've done this presentation, I think this is my 7th year now, but if you guys have any questions, please stop me while I'm speaking. So the tax levy is the amount of money that the school district is able to ask the county for in order to pay its bills. So in District 427, we're about 75% reliant on our local tax levy. And I'll go over the timeline here in just a minute. So, like I just stated, the tax levy is the largest source of revenue in Sycamore, as it is throughout most of the state in this area of Illinois. It's our most stable and reliable revenue source. We know that with the state, we've been prorated, we've not received payments and things of that nature over the last few years. We received 2 large tax payments in June and September, but we do receive some money starting in May all the way through November. This 2021 tax levy that I'm about to go through will pay for all of our expenditures for the 22-23 school year. So first, just talk about the process here. So the school district passes a budget. We pass ours in September. And then we're able to file our tax levy with the county clerk. So when we're putting together the levy, we need to look at a couple different factors. How much are we going to ask for, because we're not sure what the EAV, or estimated assessed valuation, is going to come in for the year. Are you under the tax cap? So Sycamore is under the tax cap, so there's only certain amounts that we can levy up to in each fund. The board then adopts a levy, and then we file our tax levy certification with the county clerks. We are in 2 different counties in the school district, mainly in DeKalb, but we do have a little portion of our school district that is in Kane County. Then homeowners and/or businesses are able to file abatements with the counties. And then we look for final numbers coming out in May and April, or excuse me, March and April. So I just talked about what EAV is, so equalized assessed valuation. So for our homeowners here, that's what your valuation is of your home. Why is EAV important to us? Because that is the amount that we're used to get our extension amount for our operating funds. There is a limiting rate that is set, and I'll go through what the calculation is for that in just a minute. So in Sycamore, this is our EAV by type. So you can see that most of ours is residential at 73%. And then we receive about 15% of commercial properties, and then farm would be next at a little over 7%. And then we do receive some industrial taxes. So this chart I just update every year just so the board can get a history of where we've been at over the last 8 levy years. So we look at a couple different things on this. The first one being CPI. So that's the most important number that's on this because that drives the amount of additional revenue that the district can ask for each year. So CPI kind of bottomed out in 2016 at 0.7%. And it's gone up slowly over the last few levy years, with last year being at 2.3%. I'm going to tell you in just a minute here where we're at for the 2021 levy. This CPI is based off of where it's at on December 31st of the previous year. So for the 2021 tax levy, it's based off of December 31st, 2020. Again, you can look at our EAVs. They have gone up over the last 8 levy years. And then new property is also figured into our levy formula. We kind of topped out in 2017 at $12.5 million, and then that amount's slowly been coming down. We do have 2 subdivisions that we look at that we're seeing growth in, so that would be Ruston Ponds and then also Sycamore Creek, also over there. So why is new construction important? And I'm going to show you the formula here in just a minute. So new construction is actually part of the denominator in the fraction here. So my math teacher's here if you want to help me out. But so actually that plays into us being able to capture some more dollars with new construction costs. So we always keep an eye on that also. And this is just history of new construction growth that I just talked about in that graph. So what is PTEL? PTEL is Property Tax Extension Limitation Law. So that's just a fancy word for school districts are capped at a certain amount for their different rates in each of the different funds. So again, we refer to this as the tax cap, but this phrase is often misleading to our taxpayers because it implies that that means that their tax bill cannot go up over a certain amount of money. When, in fact, it does not cap an individual's property tax bill. It just caps what the school district is able to capture in each one. So what is the limitation? The limitation is the lesser of 5% or what CPI is. So since the inception of PTEL, there has never been a CPI that has been over 5%. So we've always captured CPI less than 5%. I will tell you that CPI is trending right around 5% right now. So we're keeping an eye on that because as of December 31st of this year, that's going to set the levy for next year and what CPI will be. We have seen CPI though drop many points over a couple months. So I don't anticipate it being over 5% or maybe even anywhere close to that, but we are keeping an eye on that for the next levy year. I like this chart because I'm able to explain this again if I get calls from our local homeowners because it doesn't make sense necessarily when they see that their property value is going down, but yet the tax rate is going up. And again, it's all based on the formula that our state legislators have set for us. So this picture depicts if your existing EAV is flat, then your tax rate stays flat. If your existing EAV goes down, then your tax rate goes up. And if your existing EAV goes up, your tax rate goes down. So the situation that we've been in for the last few years is that your existing EAV has gone up, so your home value has gone up, but yet the school district's tax rate itself has gone down. So this is a formula that I have spoken about over the last few slides, and I'm not going to go over it, and I'm not even going to try to explain it because it's a little complicated. But this is what we use to come up with the limiting rate each year. So the limiting rate is based on your prior year extension, so how much you've collected in overall taxes. Your new property or construction is outside of your tax cap. And also our debt service payments are also out of the tax cap, so that is not taken into effect. You are able to levy for what your debt is, so that amount is not capped. So again, like I just spoke about, we use our prior year extension. We apply our CPI to that. We estimate what the EAV and the new construction is going to be. So I am in talks with our DeKalb County and Kane County, and they're able to tell me what their estimated EAV is right now. Again, we won't know what that's going to be until March or April. And so we have to make sure that we are using an appropriate EAV so we're not leaving any money on the table when those numbers do come out. So the truth in taxation law. This law is out there if a school district is going to levy more than 5% of the prior year's extension. Debt service is outside of that, that increase. So since I've been in this district, we've not levied over 5%, but for transparency purposes, we have always done a truth in taxation hearing. And so that's always done when you are preparing your final levy. And so we will continue to do that for this levy year. And then there's just some legalities that we need to take care of posting it in the local newspaper. And then a public hearing is held, like I said, when the final levy is presented. So this is just a picture of what our levy confirmation looks like from DeKalb County. Kane County is similar to this. Most of the counties in this area uses this form. It's very user-friendly. I've seen other counties, Cook County for instance, theirs is a little more difficult to understand and look at. So what this does is, if you look at the column that has the rate setting EAV, I know it's kind of small there, that is the EAV that we would look at, and that's the EAV that we would use in our formula. Then that next section there has any TIF money or tax increment money that we have out there. And so we did have a TIF in Sycamore. It's actually, it expired. They closed it out early, so it's going to look a little bit different on our levy sheets going forward. This also shows new property, and it totals, in this case, the 8.5 million is DeKalb, and then the line under that, the new property overlap, would be Kane County's amount. So Kane County does have a little bit of new property also. And then down below is, starting at the left, is the levy request. So that's the amount that the school district has asked for. The calculated rate is the rate, and some of the funds are capped itself, so you can only levy up to a certain amount in each fund. The money in each fund is restricted for that fund. So the money that's levied in the education fund is able to be spent on all things education. So teachers, paras, staff, supplies, anything for our classrooms, that's all done in the education fund. Operations, that's limited to everything you're going to spend on your custodial maintenance, buildings, things of that nature. So we are restricted in each fund on where that money is spent. So then if you look in the middle there, you see that limited rate that is applied to the extension, and then all the way on the right there, you would get your final county total extension, and that's by fund. Okay, so for the 2021 tentative levy, the CPI is set at 1.4%. Again, that was the CPI that was from December 31st, 2020. In talking with our county assessors, we are looking at an estimated EAV percent change as a positive 3% increase. Estimated new construction for 2021 would be about $8.6 million. Now that number can go up because we can have some more new property there, and the estimated EAV percent could actually go down. And in fact, it typically does, because we have appeals out there every single year. So that percentage does go down. This is just a chart looking at levy year 20 compared to what we're asking for 2021. Again, what we're asking for is not what we're going to get. It will end up being lower than this, but we want to make sure that we're capturing all those dollars. So what I have proposed here is an aggregate estimate of a 4.94% increase. Our debt service extension has a 5.4% increase, but we do know that we are going through some bond restructuring right now, so that will take effect for the 2021 levy. That won't be finalized until November. So when I bring back the final levy, that number is going to be changed. But we just go with what we know at this time. So then total extended for 20 to 21 is a 5.02% increase. Again, that's the total with the debt service increase. So these are our operating rates or our tax rate. If you were to look at your tax bill, each taxing body has their own tax rate. So this would just be for the school district. So we're proposing about an 8%, or an 8-cent change, a reduction in your tax rate for 2021. I like to show this, although I always give the disclaimer that this is just for the school district's portion of your tax bill. So based on whatever your assessed home value is, you look at what your approximate tax bill was for 2020, again, just for the school district's portion, because we are only overseeing our school district tax levy. Compared to what our approximate tax bill would be for 2021, you can see the savings there on the right-hand side for each homeowner based on their valuation of their home. So for the school district's portion, there would be a decrease. That doesn't mean that your overall tax bill is going to decrease though, because each taxing body has their own tax rate.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Does this decrease account for the 3% EAV increase year over year? Or is this, I'm just wondering, like that dollar amount, the $400,000 home assessed value, 2020, is that just, that's assuming it was just flat, but there was in fact a 3% increase to that, so
yeah,
in
so
theory.
This does take into account the estimated EAV and that, so that is part of the formula that I use to come up with these numbers.
Really? So, okay, so the
Yeah.
2021 is like that 400,000, that's like a weighted 400,000.
Yeah, so, and again, that's just for the school district portion.
Right.
Not your entire tax bill. Yeah. Okay, and just timeline, it is going to be a little different this year. So I'm presenting the tentative levy tonight. We will advertise the levy according to the truth in taxation hearing. Because there is not 30 days between this meeting and our second meeting in November, because the truth in taxation dictates that you have to have 30 days in between, I will bring this back to the board on December 14th then. So we'll need to do it at that board meeting. That still gives us plenty of time to file with the county clerk by the last Tuesday in December. And then, like I stated earlier, in March or April is when we would verify the levy and we would get final numbers from the counties. And then the tax bills go out to the taxpayers in May, and then that first large payment is sent to the district in June, and then the second in September. Any questions?
How did you arrive at that figure, the 5% or the 5.02%? Just curious, what goes into that? Is it just your projection on what CPI is and, right, like I see.
This increase?
Yep, yeah, the 5.02.
So this would be the estimated total extension given to us. So just dividing those two is how I got the 5.02%.
And then those two, the 4.94 and the 5.4, where do those derive from? That's just
Same thing, just comparing 2020 to
year over
2021.
year, okay.
Yep.
Nicole, you said there are tax rate limits on each of those different fund categories. Are those the rates that are posted on your previous slide, such that we're already kind of at the limit for each of those?
This one? So we are not at the limit for our funds. In fact, no, we're not at the limit for any of our funds.
Okay.
So there is still some room in some of them. So,
Okay, I see the max rate there.
Yep, yeah, so the max rate's on there.
What would be an inhibitor to hitting those caps? Like why would, just curious, is it just prudence for the taxpayer?
Yeah, and if we did that, then our percentage would be way over that 5% too, which I think we've tried, we've always tried to limit that, so
Right.
that would just be a change in our thought process.
So there are some funds that don't have a
Correct.
limited rate.
Correct.
Thank you.
So that's all I had tonight, Jim. So the board would just need to take action on the tentative levy resolution tonight.
Is there a motion to adopt the resolution establishing an estimated levy for the year 2021?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
DeVito,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Red,
Yes.
Shiloh,
Yes.
Davy, Dunbar,
Yes.
motion carried.
Next item then is superintendent's report.
Good evening, everybody. A short superintendent's report for me, but we have a great group of speakers lined up. So before they get started, I just want to run through our mission, empowering all learners to succeed in their world. Our vision is to provide an ideal learning experience where students and staff are engaged and want to come back the next day. Our core values, some of which are trustworthiness, integrity, empathy, citizenship, and responsibility. And then our professional learning communities ask 5 questions, and these serve as discussion points for our PLCs. What do we want students to know and learn? What do students want to know and learn? How will we know if they've learned it? What will we do if they don't learn it? And what do we do if they already know it? One of the, I would say, growing trends in education, K-12 education, is the need to keep an eye on social emotional wellness. I would argue for both students and staff. But it's really become a focus over the last year and a half during the pandemic and all of the changes that we've tried our best to live through and are kind of muddling through. And there are no better experts in our school district than the group that is going to speak with us tonight. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to, I think, Mrs. Gentile is going to kick it off, right? And Mrs. Gentile, would you maybe introduce the speakers?
I will.
So, good evening. Thank you for having us here. I'm Mary Gentile. I'm one of the social workers here in the district. Been here for quite a while, and I'm glad to see everybody. So, and along with Mary Ellen Spicer from the high school, and Jen Cam from elementary, who have also been with us for a long time. We've been a team for a long time. So, thank you for letting us be here tonight. So when I got the email from from Mrs. Sloniker, asking to do an update about SEL and COVID and where are we at right now and how are people doing, I thought, oh my gosh, where do we begin? So we kind of wanted to make this something meaningful to all of us, right? We'll talk a little bit tonight about SEL. What does that mean? What does that look like in our district? But I'd really like to start off talking about COVID and how that's impacted and continues to impact us. Although my slide says it's good to be back in school, right? So first of all, I think with everything that's gone on, with all the ups and downs, with all of our lives, I think most people will agree just being back in the school buildings, seeing our students for better, for worse, for ups and downs, it was such a joy, such a joy to be back and to see these students functioning in whatever capacity they can, see all of us functioning in whatever capacity we can. So when I really get to the point where I'm like, I think this is a bad dream and I might wake up from it someday, I remind myself that no, it's reality, and we'll just kind of keep pushing forward. So I want to try to stay focused on that. But in regards to social emotional learning, there are standards. Oh, I'm supposed to do this myself, sorry. So we do have standards through the Illinois, through the ISB, the social emotional standards, right? And these are just like the teachers have standards and all the measures and things that they work on. We also have the social emotional standards. So basically there's three, and we always look at them as self-awareness, social awareness, and decision making, and that's mainly about our behaviors. So when the summer, I've kind of lost track of time, but when we actually were out of school and then we were in the summer getting ready for the fall when we didn't come back and then eventually came back, there was a lot of work done by a number of us. And CASEL, which is an organization that does a lot around social emotional learning and behavior, along with the state of Illinois, came up with kind of another version of the SEL standards. And so we adopted those in terms of thinking about how are we going to take care of our students, our staff, all of our school personnel. So what we've really been focusing on and thinking about are relationships and partnerships, being connected and supportive of each other, and creating that safe, supportive, and respectful learning environment. Okay, so that's kind of been the driving force in terms of, at least I think from the social work perspective and working with other people, of how to get our students and staff back up to whatever we're going to get to. So again, I think we do need to recognize that it is wonderful to be back, but we are still living in the midst of a pandemic and COVID is still with us. And I think sometimes it's nice because we get back into some kind of a normal routine, whatever that might be for each of us. But then something happens and it comes right back to you again, right? So certainly we know that mental health and social well-being is being, I don't need to tell you things that you don't already know and you don't hear on a daily basis. But when you think about students, we know there was kind of a mental health crisis before the pandemic. And we maybe weren't talking about it so much, but it only intensified when this pandemic hit. One of the kind of common statistics that that you'll hear as you read or listen to different things is that really since the beginning of the pandemic, in terms of the stats that they have, the emergency room visits for mental health for students has increased significantly. And the numbers that we generally hear, that from 5 to 11-year-olds, it's increased by 24%. Okay, so these are actually parents presenting their children to an emergency room because they're having some type of a mental health crisis, usually around depression, anxiety, suicidality. One of the statistics I read was the suicidality in young girls has increased significantly as well. And then going back to the emergency room visits, for 12 to 17 years old, it's increased 31%. That's like 1/3. That's a huge number. So we know that our population, although people always say we live in this small community, right? But our population of students is really no different than anywhere else, right? Because we are all, we're all people. So whether we're rural or city or whatever, we still have that same general population of students. So if you ask yourself sometime, what is going on around here with these students? Well, maybe that's part of it. We know about extended periods of social isolation and what students were doing during that time, what stresses their families were experiencing. And then, of course, we have that screen time, social media. I think there was, I shouldn't go off my slides, but I do believe there was some kind of hearings today that had to do with social media and looking at research now about really trying to quantify how social media is impacting children's development and their mental health. So I think we'll be getting a lot more information about that. But getting back to COVID in terms of its impact, we know that education, I don't have to tell you, was impacted during the pandemic. The dynamics in the family around education, I don't have small children anymore, but I keep, the parents that I talk to, the lines between being a parent and an educator, I can't imagine how difficult that has been for everyone. I know it was hard enough just to make sure my sons were doing their homework, let alone think I was going to be able to teach them and manage their daily work in school. And then the other thing I realized is that whole transition that we had as a district to one-to-one Chromebooks, right? I remember, I don't know, Jim, we were handing out Chromebooks and when the students couldn't come in the building, right? So, they had to learn how to go onto all these different platforms, and this was all done when we weren't all even in the same building. There's been some good things about that, but that is a continuing trend. Of course, technology, we already talked about that. It impacts us at all levels, at home, at school, certainly the social media. I think I said social media like 3 times in my presentation. COVID continues, as I said, it certainly continues to have disruptions on families, expectations, behavioral expectations, parents' ability to be there and supervise their children. Some parents are back to work and some aren't. So there's been a lot in terms of families. The family social connections, all those missed holidays and parties and sleepovers at grandma's and birthday parties with cousins and neighborhood parties with the kids down the street. So those social connections, which fortunately are coming back, but again, it seems like there's this kind of overriding, are you going to get sick? Aren't you going to get sick? Those kinds of things. And then, of course, we have death and illness in family. We have students ourselves who've had COVID. We have family members. We have people who have died from COVID. So that continues to impact families. And then, of course, health, right? We have ongoing issues around vaccination. Oh, I'm supposed to, somebody could tell me when I don't like this, I'm sorry. So we have ongoing issues around vaccines. We have ongoing issues around testing. We have ongoing issues around quarantines. And then there's a whole issue of non-COVID illnesses, right? People get sick, and now they're talking about, did you get your flu shot? Because now everybody's going to get the flu because nobody had it last year. So, these things are continuing to impact our students, our families, as well as ourselves. So, again, it's nice to get into that routine and that normalcy, but I think we have to be very cognizant, especially with our students, when we still have a lot of academic expectations, which we should, but remembering that underlying, they're struggling with these things to some degree. And if it's not them, then maybe it's one of us, right? And so we're having to really work with our students. Social issues, again, we know lots of things happened during the pandemic. We know there's continuing social strife in many different ways. There's 24/7 exposure to news and events. Some children's households, they're very vocal about things that are going on. You know, and children are being exposed, and maybe they understand, maybe they don't. Maybe they feel like they can talk about it, maybe they don't. So there's a lot, I think that can be very stressful. And then, of course, the economic issues, right? I'm not an expert on the pandemic, but we know that there was a real inequality in terms of the economic impact that COVID has had on families, right? Some people, their income and their jobs didn't change at all, whereas other people, you know, their whole lives fell apart. And there's a real difficulty with that. And we don't always know which is which, right? When we're dealing with our students, we don't know what's going on in their families. We don't know what the economic impacts are. Housing, right? We all know about the housing. You know, on the one hand, we've got houses that are selling at I don't know, people are outbidding each other, right? They're writing letters, please let me buy your house. I'll give you, $50,000 more than it's worth. At the same time, you have these other people on the other end who, they haven't paid their rent for a year and a half, and they don't know what's going to happen. So, and again, we don't know of our students which is which, So when we're working with them, those are the things that we don't know. And when you talk about SEL, that's what we, as the professionals working with the students, really want to think about. And then, of course, food insecurity, right, comes along with that. Okay. So those were the things that we thought of in terms of, again, this kind of, situation. Some new words will probably even come out of this, right? Like where you're living in two different worlds. Okay. So just getting back then to SEL, or what we refer to now, some of you know RTI, now we refer to the multi-tiered systems of support, right? So when you know that you have students, whether it's because of COVID dealing with these issues, all the issues that I just listed aren't new to people either, right? I mean, we've worked with students for years, and they've had some degree maybe of some of these situations. So we've always been aware that we need to be cognizant of children and their families and what they might need. But anyway, so the multi-tier system of support is kind of what we call the pyramid, and it helps us think about what type of social, behavioral, and emotional support do students need. So at the top tier, and I'm going to go down, so tier 3, well, the way you think about it is the pyramid, usually you'll see like percentages, we didn't put it up there, but usually your top triangle is about maybe 10 to 15%, and then, if I can remember the math right, and then the middle is a little bit less, and then the bottom is probably should be about 75-80% of your students are in tier 1. So when we talk about tier 3, we're really only talking about maybe 10% of the students. And that is usually special education or a 504 plan, which a 504 plan is a plan that's similar to special education. They just have different maybe types of academic support. So those students in the top tier 3 have very intense programming. And usually they're being serviced through the social worker, they're being serviced through specialized, other types of specialized professionals in the district. And then tier 2 is what we would call targeted or an intervention. So those are students that need some added support, but they don't need a complete change in curriculum. Or maybe like for one I know that we have here at the middle school is a math intervention. So the idea is if you give them specific help in math, then that'll get them back into their regular math class. Or with social emotional, target group might be an executive functioning group. Those are students that have difficulty maybe being able to plan things, to get their work done. So we're going to give them some skills about how to get organized, how to get your homework done, how to communicate with the teacher in a way to get your things done. So it's usually a short term, maybe 6 or 8 sessions to get them where they need to go. And that's usually sometimes a social worker, but more often it might be the guidance counselor or other kinds of specialists. Right? We have math specialists. I think at the elementary they still have reading specialists. And then the bottom part is, again, usually around 80%, should be around 80% of your students, are what we call universal, and that's all of our students. So when we think about SEL, we want to provide supports and services for all of the students. Because again, when you think about all those factors that I talked about, we don't know which students necessarily need help or don't. So we really want to focus on that tier 1 in terms of the district, because that's where the support comes from for the students. Oh, seeing if I was doing my things, you would know. So here's the intensive. We talked about the academic support with the individualized special IEP. They have different learning environments. They get modifications and accommodations. Social support, individual, we do a lot of groups. We consult with the teachers, and we are certainly always working with the parents. 2, right now we actually at the middle school too, we're doing like a processing group. We have an executive functioning group. I know at other schools they have different types of group around anxiety, self-management. The social workers and the speech pathologists work together. So they would be more targeted types of interventions. We have different types of academic support in Tier 2, maybe some lunchtime study groups before or after school. And that would come usually from that social worker, the school counselor. And then also we do coordinate a lot with community services. We actually have some community services that come into the school. Right now, the middle school does have a counselor from one of the agencies that comes in and helps us. So when we get to that bottom part of the pyramid, the universal or for all students, one of the things that we wanted to remember is, again, that we need to recognize that all students have had a different experience during the pandemic. So some students come in and they've been ready to learn and they've just wanted to be at school and they've gotten here and they're just on their way. And they just walk down the hall and they get their work done and they're doing just fine. Other students, like I said, maybe they have residual things going on at home and they're really having a struggle. What we want to do is normalize our student experiences, give them opportunities, again, just to have that normal day. And at that universal level, we have some specific programs. We have the Second Step program, that's a universal program that we have to help with social emotional learning. It starts at the early age with recognizing feelings and being able to talk about feelings. And then as they grow into the end of elementary into middle school, it's more about conflict management, how to communicate with others, those kinds of things. I know at the high school they do some I can statements. I think that's kind of similar to the Second Step. Right now we're in the midst of Red Ribbon Week. We have a lot of formal and informal mentoring, those kinds of things. And then again, we just want to continue to integrate those students back into the everyday. I guess what I wanted to say about Tier 1 is that when you look at the pyramid, Tier 1, as I said, is the foundation of SEL. And it's the foundation of that positive culture, right? Because that's where the majority of the students are. So that's where we want people to be able to work together, helping students learn how to work in teams, how to recognize, use their empathy, those kinds of things. And again, it's really important to remember that when you look at the pyramid, you talk about the social workers and the counselors and the specialists are working up here, but the larger part of the triangle is about all students and all staff. So the Tier 1 is really about all school personnel working and supporting students. And I was kind of thinking that SEL, in my mind, has been called many things throughout the years, right? You could call it anything you want, but I think what it really comes down to is it's about those relationships. It's about the relationships and the collaboration between the students, between and among the students, the school personnel, families, the community. So it's really about that that working together. So what we'd like to do for tonight is to kind of give you a flavor. I've already mentioned some things, but give you a flavor of what is being done at each level. So we're going to start off with Jen Cam from the elementary. She's going to show you some examples of what's going on there. I'll come back and do middle school, and then Mary Ellen will come back and show you some things from the high school. Just push that.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so as Mary kind of mentioned, as social workers, we're used to being in the trenches with our families that are struggling the most, right? Our kids that are struggling the most. So COVID or no COVID, that's just kind of what we do and what we've always done. And I think that we really wanted to highlight what's going on in our classrooms with the majority of our students. And so while teachers have always been doing these things, I really believe that COVID, something good that's come from this, is that our teachers are really being seen in all of the amazing social emotional learning activities that they do on a daily basis. It just is a part of their classroom culture. And so it's been really exciting and neat for me to see just so many amazing things that come out of all of our classrooms in the building. And I don't have a lot to talk about. I just wanted to talk about a few of the information, the feedback I got from our teachers as well. I didn't put names with them because these are going on at all the buildings and in multiple, different classrooms. So Class Dojo is one thing that's being used in some buildings. So this is a positive behavior system. Students can earn positive points, and it associates with the sound. They have a little avatar, so a lot of elementary classrooms can use that. And connected to that is some videos, the Mojo Show. I don't know if you have the links connected if you have the PowerPoint or not, but I did link a few things if you want to see what some of this stuff is really about. But that's really growth mindsets. You hear things like the power of the word yet. I don't know how to do that yet. Teachers might be talking about grit, like the stamina, really being able to keep working hard and getting through something that's tough. Second step, our teachers are teaching that in the elementary buildings, the majority of them. Social workers may be supporting them in some of that. Videos were all created last year for the elementary teachers that they were able to utilize for teaching second step. And it's also being taught at the pre-K level. So our little Spartans are receiving the language of second step before they get into our Sycamore kindergarten classrooms. Mind Getty is another one. This is all about mindfulness, and there's just I have a picture as we go through a little bit, just a little monster type of character, and it talks about different components of your brain and different things that you can do for, kind of relaxing your body or refocusing, grounding, those types of things. So some of our classroom teachers are talking about that. They're using Mind Getty in their classrooms. We have some teachers that are assigning homework for SEL activities. So instead of going home and maybe doing a certain homework assignment, you need to go home and play outside for 15 minutes or go home and draw for 15 minutes, giving them a list of different activities that they can do, disconnected from screen time, and doing something for self-care or something to connect them to somebody in their family or in their community. Some classrooms are doing yoga stands, modeling, so modeling positive self-talk, modeling a positive culture, modeling compliments, modeling how to receive a compliment and give a compliment. I think modeling is probably one of the most used, most common SEL strategies that are used by our teachers and all of our staff, not just our teachers, our support staff, and everyone. Literature. So literature is so heavy in social emotional learning. I do have a link here for 50 children's books that teach that. I know classroom teachers do that. Our social workers go into classrooms and we might read a book and teach supplemental activities to support our kids. But literature is huge, and that goes all the way up through 12, all the way through college, really. Our books we read as adults. Social, emotional, reflection, just self-care, everything you can find throughout literature. So reading and SEL can be tied together really nicely. Character counts is used in many of our elementary buildings, and all the elementary buildings use just kind of variations of positive behavior motivators, and so some of them, I'm not going to say what all the names are because I will forget somebody and I don't want to do that, but we all have our different award or way to nominate and to honor students that are really demonstrating those positive behaviors. Our zones of regulation, I did talk about this a little bit last year, so this is
categorizing all of our feelings into 4 different zones based off of how our body is regulated or how our body might be feeling and our thoughts and feelings. So our early childhood program, our Little Spartans are using this in their classrooms. So those kids again have that language when they come into kindergarten. We push that language into some of our kindergarten classrooms and some of our other older elementary classrooms as well. I know I hear Mary talk often about like some of the second step language or the zones language. Kids get to middle school and it's like old news, like you're really going to talk to me about this again, like I know all of this stuff, because sometimes it becomes such a, it's just part of the culture after a while. So that's a really neat thing to see as well. Morning meetings are used throughout the elementary district. Again, this is a really well-researched social emotional learning strategy, and this is all about setting the tone for your classroom for the day, inviting students into your room, making them feel safe, making them feel secure and welcomed and included, all of those things. That really sets the tone and sets the culture of inclusiveness and acceptance and kindness in your classroom too. And then there's a few pre-recorded videos. Last year we did a lot of pre-recorded videos on different social emotional regulation strategies or mindfulness strategies, different things that we pushed out, and teachers pushed those out into their kids that were at home learning remotely. In some of our buildings that's still happening, they're using them within their classrooms just to supplement social emotional learning. So then I just included a few pictures. That guy on the left is Mind Yeti. So he's our little monster friend that talks about different ways that we can tap into our brain and calm our brain and learn really about ourselves. In the middle is a second step poster. That's just, if you walk through a lot of elementary classrooms, you might see those posters up on the wall. There's a variety of them. There's anywhere from just basic, how are you a learner skills about listening with your ears and your eyes, your body, and then we talk about how to calm down. There's problem solving steps as well as part of that as they get older. Those are our character counts, just kind of a snapshot of some of the character counts. Here's an example of a morning meeting that was shared, and you would click on that and walk through it. So you'll see there's some academic stuff to it, there's some discussion. I think this one is about failure, so it gives you opportunities to talk about some and reflect on some bigger topics maybe within your class. In the Little Spartans or in a kindergarten classroom, a morning meeting might look like the hello song, where you're singing good morning to all your students and you're inviting them into the room by their name. You're making them feel like they're a big part of that classroom community, and making them feel welcome and happy to be at school that day. And then on the right is actually a picture from one of our early childhood classrooms, and you can see the zones are up in there, the second step is up in there, and that's all down low on the wall near a quiet area, a nice space for a child to go if they're feeling overwhelmed or need kind of to reset. And you would see visuals or pictures similar to this in many other classrooms as well. I happen to work in South Prairie, and so these classrooms, this was easily accessible to me to get a snapshot too of that, but you would see that really across the board in all of our elementary buildings. So that's all I have for elementary. Are you coming back? That is not an exhaustive list, by the way, so please know there's a lot more going on than that.
I was just going to say that I think the hard part when you want to recognize things, situations or people, you always feel like there's those people that got left out, right? So when you're highlighting one person, you're leaving somebody else out, and it's not intentional. And it's actually good, because it means there's so much going on that we can't talk about it all at once or recognize everybody at once, but thank you. So in terms of the middle school, this is a couple things just going back in terms of kind of thinking, integrating last year into this year, right? Again, so one of the things that we did do when the students came back last year, was kind of, different phases, but when I think it was Easter, was that when whoever was coming back, came back for that 3 days or every other day or whatever. So we did a series of just some information we actually were in here in the ELA with our teachers, and we presented a PowerPoint on supporting the Sycamore middle school students during the school closure. So we kind of helped them think about how to reintegrate the students. And I think we also did something earlier. The other thing, again, historically here at the middle school, we've done a number of book studies where we've either had small groups come together as professionals, Or right now, we're doing, the book is called Onward. Our assistant principal, Sarah Frankwitz, is leading us through that. And so right now, we're doing this Onward, which is about faculty or professional resilience. So each week each month, we're reading a chapter. It's actually a really interesting book. It was written by somebody, educator. And each month, it starts in August and then it ends in July. So it's actually written for the school year, and so each chapter is a different month. So we've been doing that in terms of supporting the staff. And one of the interesting activities that came out of that was in our last staff meeting, actually the administrators literally had pictures of all the students, I'm assuming it came from the yearbook, on podiums, and we were given these little red stickers, and then we walked around and we put a sticker on every student that we felt like we had a relationship with. So the idea was to make sure that every student had at least one sticker, if not more. And then the next step, I believe, is that what they're going to be doing is the students maybe that hopefully everybody had a sticker, but if for some reason they didn't, or if they only had like one, we're going to start kind of reaching out to those students. So that way we're making sure that all the students are getting connected with an adult who can be supportive of them here in the school. And again, we don't know anything about them individually. We don't know, do they need help, or was COVID good for, okay for them or not okay? No, it's a universal intervention, because we know all students need at least one adult to support them, right? So that's a really good universal tier 1 intervention. Which, again, what's old is new again, because for many years we had the Starfish program, which was very similar to that, and it was a really successful program. So I'm looking forward to that again. And then again, just some examples, kind of going back and forth in terms of what we started during COVID and maybe what's continuing. So Mrs. Nelson is one of our wonderful PE teachers, and she shared this with me. A couple things. The postcard, what she explained to me was, it was kind of, the students would vote on an area, and then she would come up with, I don't know if she or they made the postcard, and then they would do like a virtual walking tour, and then they would kind of find out of these different places that you would stop, what you could do active there, like when you got to the, so the state park, what you would do at the state park, or you would take a walk. So they did that virtually. This was during remote. And then the check-ins, these kinds of things, the check-ins, the thumbs up, thumbs down, the smiley faces, the Google forms, I think those really were very helpful when the students were gone, because it was a quick, easy way for teachers to check in and get feedback from students. But these are continuing. I know even me, as the social worker, we've adapted a lot of the same kinds of things into getting feedback from our students and kind of checking in with them. And then again, initiatives that we've had for a long time but continue, we have the growth mindset. Again, this is Mrs. Flaherty, a math interventionist, right? But what is she focusing on? She's focusing on growth mindset, right? Knowing that the students don't just learn math, they learn about how to be emotional and socially healthy. Mrs. Bolda sent me this. Her students each are coming up with a measurable goal each quarter along with an action plan. And then at the end of the quarter, they review it, and then they kind of change it, right? And again, that's a universal. It's not only the students that are, not passing, or only the students that are earning A's. It's all the students in the class. So it's teaching them that life skill, how to set a goal, how to, change your goals, how to do those kinds of things. So she's teaching them that life skill, which again is a tier 1 type of intervention. And we do have fun at the middle school, a lot of the time. So these are some of the things, again, kind of things that had been going on and kind of how they've evolved in terms of now coming back from COVID. So the recognition points, that's our basic like MTSS, PBS program that's been at the middle school as long as I have, so it's been a long time. But it's had different iterations, it's kind of changed over time. But it is our way of kind of setting those behavior expectations, acknowledging and supporting positive behavior. So on the left, I know it's hard to see these, but on the left is actually a table with a bunch of little baggies, and the students, now we have a Spartan store, so when the students earn a certain number of recognition points, they can cash those in. And we have a guidance counselor here, Mrs. Herkler, and I know she has a team, and I don't know all their names, so I would give them credit as well. But they literally like fill the orders for the students, and then they put them on the table outside the office. So at lunchtime, all the kids, I want to get my reward. So, you know, and these happen to be baggies. The day before, they were all brown bags. But they literally have their name on it. They have whatever little trinkets or things. So that's kind of motivating for them. The yellow is something recent. What happened last year was they started doing these, they still tried to do something with that behavior expectation, but obviously we weren't giving out recognition points. But the students were able to earn points remotely. And then the teachers, if they hit a certain number of points, the teachers, they started doing these challenges. And some of them were pretty, like they had a karaoke contest. They had like the teachers did the karaoke, and then the kids got to vote remotely who won. They've done just a number of different things. I think there was like a hot pepper contest of which teacher could eat the hottest pepper. I mean, it's just been a number of them. But, you know, like the stuff that middle school kids want to see their teachers do. So the first one in person, we came back, and the yellow ones are like a meter. What they focused on respect, because frankly, one of the things that I think we've noticed is the students, in terms of adjustment, one of the biggest adjustments, if I can speak for the middle school, is behavior expectations and student behaviors. That's been really challenging. I don't know why, because we don't have any research, because this never happened before, but it's been really, that's probably been our biggest challenge, is come in, you know, like, I know you're middle school kids and you're gonna goof around and all that, but like really just try and have a calm body. And just kind of being respectful to each other. So our first challenge this year was being respectful. And we had special points. So if you got these yellow slips, whichever team got the most, they got to the chance to do the dunk tank. So when we did our run-a-thon about a week and a half ago, we had one teacher at each grade level, and then the teams that had the most points had the opportunity to dunk their teachers in the dunk tank. So I have to tell you, the one that did it was first thing a week ago Monday. It was cold in the morning, and they were filling that tank. It was like 8 o'clock. I mean, it was cold. And there was no way that water warmed up. And that teacher went down. Like, and I saw him later in the hallway. I said, "Oh, like, were you able to like feel your body like after you?" He said, "Well, no, after the third one I couldn't feel anything, so it didn't matter that I went down 7 times." I'm like, okay. You know, but those are the kinds of things that you want to try to do to encourage students, the teamwork, you know, again, just part of social emotional health is having fun, right? Is just being a kid and enjoying yourself. And can we do that universally with all of them? And then the other picture is, again, just another kind of challenge that we did. So we always, there's lots of other things that we do that we could probably talk about, but that is a lot of what we do. And then, as I said, we really want to try to keep things normal for students, you know, that what we've done for many years. And it was so nice to be able to get some of these things back again. As I said, we did the run-a-thon that morning. It was a great morning as long as you didn't have to go in the dunk tank. Our cross-country team, just to be able to do a little shout-out, we did have our boys, the whole team went to state, and we had one of our girls who went as individuals. So they went down and got to go, I think it was again down in Bloomington Normal again, and you know, wonderful year for them. And then we started, not we, a couple of our teachers, Mrs. Tatey and again Mrs. Herkler, our counselor, started the Conscious Kids Club. And the Conscious Kids Club is a club that's based on inclusion and diversity. And it's a brand new club, and they're kind of identifying for themselves, but their focus really is on, again, trying to, at an age-appropriate level, deal with some of the controversies and, some of the issues that we saw over the last, certainly highlighted in the last 18 months, but in terms of inclusion and diversity. So that's a really great group, and attracting a whole group of students, again, that probably wouldn't join other clubs, but are really joining with each other. And I think it's going to be a really nice group for them. Okay, and then, and so like I said, and there's many other activities that we weren't able to highlight, but again, it's trying to think about those ways of including all of our students and supporting all of their mental health. So I'm going to let Mary Ellen come up and talk about the high school.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen Spicer. I've been at the high school since 2008, and this year I'm also with the life school students, which I love. One of the things I laughed about tonight, I guess you have to have brown boots to be a social worker. Right? We're all sitting here. So I don't want to repeat us too much. Okay. A couple of things embedded in the first two slides are two of the videos that we put together, one in May of 2020, and then the next one was in September of 2020, and they all are with our amazing student support services team. That's our school counselors, our social workers, our school psych, our school nurse. We work together as a student support services team, and these videos really talk to the students about what they're going through. We validate you, we understand what you're going through, what resources and supports are available within the community, and who our faces were, because some of our freshmen who were remote didn't even know who we were. So we wanted them, with these videos, you'll see our faces are there, we're introducing ourselves, and we're talking to them about what they might be feeling and going through. In our nurses, in the hallway, in the main hallway, we talk a lot about mental health, and everything that I'm going to highlight tonight is focusing and celebrating our teachers, but everything that you're going to see on here is really student-driven. It's their artwork is incredible. These Mental Health Matters posters are all designed by students. One on anxiety, helping a friend in crisis, what to say and not say when you have a friend who might be sharing some very serious content with you, that they're struggling with depression, suicidal thoughts. Who do they go to? What do you say? How do you validate them? And then lastly, the coping with stress. These were up in the bathrooms as well, and we rotate them in and out of the bathrooms so that if a student is kind of having a meltdown and they leave their classroom, a lot of times they go to the bathroom before they go to the counseling office. We really encourage students to come down to the office and get support, but sometimes they do go to the bathroom first. So within that, there's, they call it potty press in a lot of universities. So it gives them some strategies and some things that they might be able to do, 4 square breathing, using some mindfulness strategies in order to help them regain some composure, and then go seek some additional support if necessary, or be able to go back to class. Next, I'm going to highlight our teachers. They're doing remarkable work in helping get our kids back in a groove. They build connections every day. Most of our high school teachers are standing outside their doors. They're greeting every student by name when they walk in. When I walk down the halls, they're always present. It is huge for culture, for the teachers to stand out there and greet all their students as they walk in. Some of our teachers have a song of the day playing, and it's up on the board, and the kids build playlists. We have a new English teacher, Miss O'Donnell. She does a writing prompt. Once in a while, integrating some of the things that rhetorical language, maybe they just had a lesson, but her writing prompt is, how are you feeling today? And she makes them use the lesson that they had the day before in their response. And then she can get a pulse on how they're feeling. And then Luke Spicer, he's a social studies teacher. At the beginning of the school year, he broke the kids into small groups and said, I want you to develop a mission statement. for our class. This is going to be how you're going to feel when you walk in here every day. What's the culture of our classroom going to be? These are 3 examples. Look at the artwork of those students. They picked their mission statement and then they all sign it. It's kind of like a mini contract. When I walk in the class, this is what I want our culture to feel like every day. Jeff Bainbridge, our Spanish teacher, one of the things he does is kind of similar, only he's tying in Spanish vocabulary. They build communities. Each student has their own house, so they have their own autonomy, but then they also have a community. And what are the norms and expectations of that community? They talk about respect. It's all aligned with our core values of the district. And so all of those things are listed up there, and then he's tying in social emotional learning with learning Spanish vocabulary. Ms. Stuker, I'm going to go right back to the zones of regulation. She does a weekly tune-up, a weekly warm-up with them. Are you in the green zone? If you're not in the green zone and you walk into class and you're in the red zone, you're really angry, you're dysregulated, you're not going to be ready to learn. So what coping strategies do I need to prompt you to use in order for you to get back to that green zone and be ready to learn? She talks to him a lot about the size of the problem. If a student walks in and doesn't have a writing utensil, that's not a major problem. You shouldn't be in the red zone. So what do you need to do? It's a small problem. I'll give you a writing utensil. You're back and ready to learn. But then, is it a medium problem or a large problem? What extra supports do you need in order to get back to that green zone? This one is one of my favorites. Donna Kavanaugh. She's an incredible art teacher. She's retiring at the end of this year. She's going to be sorely missed. Erin DeWitt, who's another art teacher, started a prompt called Inside Out. And I don't know if you've seen the Disney Pixar movie. It's all about emotions. It's an amazing movie. So she asked her students, if you take any emotion, how would you visually represent that emotion? The first one on the left, the student holding her hand over her mouth, she drew in the summer of 2020. That's what she was experiencing during the turmoil that she was witnessing and watching, and that was her perspective. The one in the middle is a student that suffers from extensive migraines on a regular basis, and she then was expressing her emotional stress through that. And then the one on the far right is a student who describes herself as being extremely shy and wishes that she was able to verbalize her feelings more. And I mean, if you look at it, it's just incredible to me that the talent that we have in our art department. Moving forward, our crisis team, Tim Carlson, has asked us to break into subcommittees. Some of these are listed up here. The anti-bullying we focused on, it's the month of October. And so last Wednesday, we celebrated through National Unity Day. Everyone wore orange. Crystal Templin and Steve Balster organized our students and staff. We chalked the sidewalks so that when kids walked into the school that day, they were greeted with positive affirmations. Students created a playlist that during passing periods where positive songs were being played, talking about unity and kindness and respect. And this isn't something, you can have it one day event, but these are things that we want to try and continue to build on that positive culture. Moving forward, we feel like we kind of had a gut punch. The last 18 months have been tough. And like Mary Gentile said, students have to learn to be students again. And we have had some issues with behavior. But we met with a group of, our administrators are starting think tanks. And we had 6 or 7 freshmen today, and I went in and observed their lunch that they had with them. And one of the biggest things, most of them seemed extremely excited to be in the school. And they talked about what it was like to be a normal freshman. But they also talked about how COVID had a huge impact on them and how they were missing their school friends. Like they stayed in touch with their friends that they could text on a regular basis or that their parents were friends with. But they didn't see the student that they had in social studies class. And they would never text them. They weren't that type of friend, but they didn't have their school friends. And so getting that back has been amazing for our kids and amazing for our staff as well. Lastly, in January, I think you may have heard a little bit about it, but Tim's arranged we're going to have an all-school assembly. There was an independent filmmaker that was gravely impacted by the shootings at Columbine, and then he's decided to start this Teen Truth, and he gave every student in different school districts cameras to walk around and interview each other. And then the documentary came out like 2005 or 2006. And since then, he's created this Teen Truth where they go to schools across the country. And we're going to have 2 assemblies, one for freshmen and sophomores and one for juniors and seniors. And then after that, it's going to be an afternoon of student leadership summit where we'll have a group of 60 students. And what we're really trying to do is have it be students from all social groups, not necessarily just your student council representatives, but kids that might be seen as a natural leader amongst their friend group, to really sit down and talk about how do we create a positive culture where every student feels accepted and wants to learn. And if we keep thinking about social emotional learning as an avenue toward student learning, every kid will be successful. Because you're not going to learn if you don't feel good about yourself and you don't feel good about the community that you're in. And to our kids, their school is their community. So that being said, I was quick because I know we were going long. Mary's going to close us out, but I really thank you for your time. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So basically, just to wrap things up, we've already talked about in terms of, I guess, what we would consider future considerations, right? And it's just kind of reminding us of what we've already been talking about this evening, that we need to continue to recognize and honor each student, each family, each staff member across the school, their unique experience of the pandemic, right? Because it will continue to affect us all in different ways. Try to keep school, quote, as normal as possible for students, but again, recognizing that students are in just so many different areas, and the foundation of SEL, people realize you can't learn if you're not available to learn, and there's some, even basic things like, if you think about if a student comes to school hungry, if you haven't had breakfast, I don't know about you, but if I don't have my coffee in the morning, if I came to school without it, people might see a whole different side of Mrs. Gentile than usually shows up, right? Because I'd be a little cranky. Well, if you're a student who didn't have breakfast, or because something happened and mom got up late and you missed the bus and mom was yelling at you to get in the car, so you didn't have breakfast, and now it's, let's see, you're 11, 12 years old, it's 7:45 in the morning, and your teacher wants you to sit and start doing your math. That's a little challenging. So again, most of the kids probably can do that, but SEL is about recognizing that we don't know who those students are. So what are we doing? Mary Ellen used that word culture. What's the culture that's going to make every child feel comfortable, right? So a lot of times people, if a student is acting up, a lot of times the first thing I'll ask a student, did you have breakfast this morning? I know there are teachers, that'll do that. If they didn't have breakfast, can you get something for them? That's SEL, the teacher saying to a student, hey, what's going on? You don't usually act like this. I'm concerned you're a little different today. That's SEL, right? It's not like some magic thing or some program. And we have lots of programs, right? But SEL is about that connection. It's about all of those times when we just stop to honor and respect each other, whether we're grown-ups or children. We're all people, we're all human. Again, we just need to be watchful, right? We need to kind of continue to watch. I guess, again, we've never done this before, so, we could probably decide lots of things, like what we think might happen or not happen. But my guess is that by the end of the year, most of the students in that 80%, if you remember back to that triangle, will kind of be back on board and things will, be back to pretty much normal. It's those ones at the second and third tier that we're going to want to be really keeping our eye out. And they might not be the typical students or the ones that have had problems in the past. They may be, again, those students that we don't know what happened to them and their families. Again, we need to be supportive of our staff, of each other, right? I think it's kind of a worn out example, but it really makes sense to me, that whole idea of put your mask on before your child, right? It really is true, right? If we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not somehow eating breakfast and doing the things that we need to do to help ourselves and each other, then how are we going to show up, right, to be our best selves here? So we want to make sure that we're being kind and gentle with ourselves and with each other. And somebody used that word modeling, right? And the children do kind of see, they kind of get the vibe of where we're at. So we want to show them that we're taking care of ourselves in order to take care of them. And then, of course, we want to continue working, I didn't write it on here, but I wrote it on my note. We want to make sure that we're still collaborating and supporting and being very active with our families and with our communities, right? You know, parents trust us every day to send their children to us for a large part of their day, and they trust that we are going to help not just educate them, but to help them grow and be really strong adults that they will become at some point. So we're open to questions or comments if you have any.
My first comment is just to say I'm blown away. Just amazing work by you and your team. I think we've all been talking about SEL for at least the last 24 months, it seems like, and because I think we all saw in ourselves and our own families and our own social circles that things were getting heated and more difficult and challenging, and we were concerned about these statistics that you just cited at the beginning of your presentation about what the students were going through, what the staff is going through, and I think we all hoped that something could be done to help them, not maybe even realizing how much work your team and all the teachers and the rest of the staff are already doing. So I just want to say, job well done, great presentation. Love what you and everybody is doing for the students and for the rest of the staff, and you're to be commended for that.
Are you able to talk a little bit about, you cited some statistics in the beginning, kind of national maybe statistics. Are you able to talk about more, like in our school district, since COVID, is there a rise in the number of students that maybe you're helping, or?
We prepared for this question, didn't we?
Yeah, I would say yes, the answer is yes.
It is, definitely, yeah.
And one of the biggest concerns is the lack of resources. I mean, I can't tell you how many families I'm working with on a daily basis trying to have, there's waiting lists, all outside agencies right now for counseling, and that is a stressor. And that is nationwide, but that's in our DeKalb County as well.
Yeah, that's really what I
in
wanted
Kane
to
County too, a lot of our families look into Kane County, and we are in waiting lists, on a lot of waiting lists.
And so when you're working with a family like that isn't able to get the services that they feel they need, are we doing more to try to bridge that gap?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are. We have more groups focusing on, like 6-week groups on anxiety than we've had in the past. We're adding students to, like, a lot of our groups are 504 and IEP students. We're adding some more gen ed students to some of those groups if they're appropriate. There just is a definitely an increase of students seeking mental health support. It doesn't have to be crisis level, but students just needing some additional support in kind of accessing their education, and we're supporting them in doing so.
And then, not so much related to that question, although I guess maybe, how are they identified? Do we seek them out?
Well,
or
actually, some of the things that we highlighted the teachers doing, some of those check-in, check-outs, or some of those writing prompts, we find a lot of our referrals come from English teachers and art teachers. Students will express something's going on. And actually, our teachers are really great at even just identifying those students. It doesn't seem themselves, a change in behavior. They'll contact the counseling office or one of the social workers or go to the school nurse. They'll do the referral themselves. They'll walk down and say, hey, I'm worried about Joe Smith. He hasn't been himself for a week now. And so our teachers are great at doing that, identifying students in need. Friends, their peers, come and seek support. They'll identify a friend of theirs is not doing well.
Parents, a lot of times parents will call us.
Your level, yeah.
And I mean, the same at the elementary. The teachers are great about utilizing us as a resource, or just, coming to us and saying something's not right, or what can we do for this family. And just having the ability to have a full-time social worker in every elementary building this year has really been so helpful because we're so visible in our classrooms. Some of them where our higher needs classrooms maybe where more students are having a harder time transitioning back to school, or some of our kinders have never been in school, and so there's just a lot of learning how to do school. And so just being visible, and teachers are building stronger relationships with us and building stronger relationships with families and stuff because of that too. So I think parents are trusting us more. They're using us more for those mental health supports too than maybe in the past because there's nowhere to go. You know, there's very few places that families can go to right now.
Do you see students who self-identify?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean,
would
for
you
sure
say
the high
there's
school
more
level.
that self-identify or more that come to you because other people are doing an intervention?
I think that probably depends on the age group. I think at the elementary level, it's obviously adult or family, driven for a referral. Maybe by the time they're in 5th grade or 4th grade and they're familiar with who their social worker is because we've been there a few years, they may self-identify, they may come down and say, I'm really struggling, but as they get older, I think students are more likely to, self-refer themselves or to seek out that support or to a friend who's going to help them find that support.
That makes sense.
I think a big piece too for our high schoolers has been they lost a lot of motivation last year and like finding that motivation again on how to be a student and the stamina. We're getting there.
It's a long day in school when, in last year or the last year and a half, you could go take a nap for 8 minutes between your 2 classes if you wanted to. And some high schoolers would report doing that, setting the alarm on their phone. And so I think that's been probably a huge transition for a lot of students too.
Thank you for a great presentation. It was great to do such what felt, I'm sure, somewhat shallow to you, but so many details for us that we've not been exposed to.
Well, again, you just really highlight that a lot of the things that we're talking about are things that have been, already in place, and that's what's so important about SEL, is that so when we did come to this crisis, we had, at least we had systems in place, we had ways of, identifying students, and we have teachers that were reaching out and, doing all kinds of things remotely and then trying to bring it back into the classroom now. So again, we really want to make sure we continue to foster that culture of support and caring.
I think that was one of the greatest features of your presentation is we kind of know the academics behind it. We've seen, these structures before, and we've seen these words before, but to see the actual things that are happening and to hear about the actual things that are happening, that's what really elucidates, that's what really illuminates us. So we thank you for that and appreciate your attendance here tonight and a really very thorough presentation.
Thank you.
And thanks for all the work that you've been doing and the support you've been giving to students and your fellow teachers and staff and to the community at large. Thank you very much. It's very important work, especially at this time.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Anything else for the superintendent's report?
That's it.
Next item then is open discussion and future agenda items. I wonder, we did talk about the fact that there's a TIP district that's going out of existence. But there's also one that's being considered to be placed into existence, and I wonder if maybe at a future meeting we might have some information on that and how it's going to impact us and what our input is.
We have a TIF meeting on November 8th, so I will have an update for you guys after that.
Great. Any other issues, open discussion issues, future agenda items? Is there a motion then to go into executive session for the consideration of matters related to the appointment, employment, or dismissal of personnel, student discipline, purchase or lease of real estate, and negotiations? Moved and seconded, roll call.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Ren? Shiloh?
Yes.
Davy?
And my kids should be asleep.
Okay, we'll recess for executive session, and then we will return to public session for our final. We're back in open session. Is there a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
So moved. Second?
Moved and seconded, roll call.
Ren?
Yes.
Shiloh?
Yes.
Davy?
Yes.
DeVito?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Dunbar?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is there a motion to amend the real estate sales contract?
So moved.
Second?
The amendment will be
That's what I didn't know.
Oh, yeah.
to change the zip code.
Yes,
For the parcel.
in section 2 of the resolution of purchase property to change the zip code of the property to 60178.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to amend the real estate contract. So we'll vote on that. Let's do a roll call.
Shiloh?
Yes.
Davy?
Yes.
DeVito?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Ren?
Yes.
Dunbar?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is there a motion to approve the amended real estate contract?
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded, roll call.
Davy?
Yes.
DeVito?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Ren?
Yes.
Shiloh?
Yes.
Dunbar?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll give it to you, Chris.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for your participation.